Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Sometimes the loudest message you can send is complete silence. See, women today think you gotta explain, text back, double text, write paragraphs, defend yourself. No, baby. If you want that man addicted to you, you gotta master the art of silence. Ladies and gentlemen, let me break something down for you tonight that most people don't understand. Silence. Real, powerful, confident silence. It ain't about cutting people off or walking away angry. It's about teaching respect without ever having to raise your voice. See, when you learn how to use silence the right way, you stop chasing validation and you start commanding it. That's when people look at you different. That's when they feel your presence even when you're not in the room. When I say silence teaches respect, I'm not saying be cold. I'm not saying play hard to get. I'm saying know your value so deep in your soul that you don't have to explain it every time somebody questions it. The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest because they're trying to convince everybody of something, sometimes even themselves. But when you're quiet and composed, you project something that noise can't imitate. Real, quiet, self-assured power. Think about this. When somebody crosses you, most people's first instinct is to clap back. They want to get the last word, send the last text, prove their point. But that's how you end up giving away all your energy. You see, silence is not the absence of emotion. It's the management of it. It's saying, I could respond, but I don't have to. That's strength. That's emotional maturity. And believe me, people feel it. They start noticing the difference between your quiet and their noise. In a relationship, silence speaks volumes. When a woman stops talking, a man starts listening. And if he's smart, he starts thinking. Because silence makes him realize, hold up, she ain't reacting the way she used to. Something's changed. And that's when respect begins to grow. When you no longer engage in every argument. When you no longer entertain foolishness. You show that you value your peace more than your pride. And let me tell you, peace is expensive. You don't give that away cheap. Now, a lot of folks confuse silence with weakness. They think, oh, she ain't saying nothing, she must be scared. She must be hurt. She must not care. Nah, silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much to waste your time on things that don't deserve your energy. It means you know what you bring to the table, and you're not going to beg someone to sit down and eat. Because begging for respect never earned it, but commanding it through quiet confidence. That's how you shift the whole dynamic. You ever notice how the most powerful people in the world don't talk too much? They speak few words, but when they do, everybody leans in. Why? Because silence builds anticipation. It creates space for meaning. When you're always talking, you devalue your words. But when you're selective, when you hold back until you really need to speak, your words start carrying weight. Let me tell you something. Silence makes people see themselves. It's like holding up a mirror. When you stop arguing, the other person has no one to push against. That's forced to face their own behavior. That's why silence is uncomfortable for some folks. Because it exposes them. When you withdraw your noise, your energy, your reactions, suddenly they realize the conversation they thought they controlled doesn't even exist without you. That's the lesson. You were never chasing them. They were feeding off your response. And ladies, this right here, it's especially powerful for you. Because society teaches women to always explain, to always justify, to always make others comfortable. But you don't owe nobody that much of yourself. You don't owe an explanation for choosing peace. You don't owe an argument when you know you're right. You don't have to speak just to be understood by someone who's already made up their mind. Your silence can protect your dignity in ways your words never could. Let me give you an example. A woman once told me she stopped arguing with her man. She said, "Steve, every time we had an argument, I'd fight to be heard. I'd talk, cry, yell, explain. But one day I just got quiet. Not mad quiet, peaceful quiet. And you know what happened? That man came looking for me." He said, "What's wrong? Why aren't you talking?" You see, he was used to her noise. He was comfortable in the argument because he knew how to win it. But when she took her voice out of the fight, he had to deal with himself. That's the difference silence makes. It doesn't just end the argument. It changes the whole balance of power. Now, don't get me wrong. Silence can be misused. If you use silence to manipulate or punish, that's not strength. That's control. And that'll backfire. But when your silence comes from peace and self-respect, it becomes magnetic. People feel that calmness like gravity. They can't help but be drawn back to it. Because in a world full of noise, people yelling online, arguing in texts, defending every move, the one who stays grounded in silence stands out like sunlight in a storm. Silence teaches people how to treat you. When they see you don't respond to disrespect, they stop sending it. When they realize you won't compete for attention, they start offering it freely. And when they notice you can walk away quietly, they learn that losing you doesn't come with warnings. It just happens. That's how silence earns respect. It makes people understand that your boundaries are not up for debate. Another thing about silence, it gives you time to think. Most people speak from reaction, not reflection. They say whatever emotion hits them first, then spend days regretting it. But silence gives you that pause, that sacred space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. And that space, my friends, is where wisdom lives. That's where to figure out what's really worth your energy and what's just noise trying to distract you. And men, let me talk to y'all for a second. Don't ever mistake a woman's silence for indifference. When she stops talking, she's not always giving up. Sometimes she's growing up. She's learning to protect her peace. And once she reaches that place, it's hard to get her back to chaos. Because a woman who's learned the power of silence is not the same woman who used to argue for attention. She's different now. She's calm. She's collected. She's unbothered. And that kind of woman, she's unforgettable. So when I say silence teaches respect, I mean it creates space for truth to breathe. It allows you to see who values your presence and who only valued your response. It filters out the noise and reveals the real ones. The people who notice your absence, who reach out not because they miss your words, but because they miss your energy. Silence draws the line between those who love your attention and those who truly love you. Every time you choose silence over arguing, you invest in your own peace. Every time you hold back a response that won't change anything, you build self-control. Every time you stay calm when chaos shows up, you remind yourself that peace is a choice, not a prize. So remember this, ladies and gentlemen, silence doesn't mean you've disappeared. It means you're present in a deeper way. It means you're aware, observant, and strong enough to let your energy speak louder than your words. And when people start realizing that they can't shake your peace, that's when they start respecting your presence. Because silence Real, calm, purposeful silence doesn't create distance. It creates understanding. It teaches people how to value your voice by reminding them what it feels like when they can't hear it anymore. Let me tell you something real tonight. Something I wish more people understood. You never have to argue your worth to somebody who already sees it. The only people you ever find yourself trying to convince are the ones who benefit from doubting you. And once you realize that, your whole life changes. Because when you stop trying to prove your value, you start living it. I've seen so many people, especially women, exhaust themselves trying to explain who they are, what they bring, what they deserve. Arguing with folks who already know your worth, but act like they don't just to keep control. And the truth is, the more you talk about how valuable you are, the less they listen. Because people don't respect what you say about yourself. They respect what you show about yourself. You want to know how to make someone see your worth. Stop talking. Stop explaining. Stop proving. Start demonstrating. Your actions, your energy, your consistency. That's the real evidence. You can't tell somebody you're a diamond while acting like glass. You got to move like the prize you claim to be. Because if you know you're valuable, you don't chase. You attract. You don't fight to be seen. You let your presence speak for itself. See, arguing your worth is a form of insecurity. It's like saying, please believe me. Please see me. Please understand me. But demonstrating your worth says, I already know who I am. You can either recognize it or miss it, but I'm not slowing down to explain it. That's power. That's confidence. And let me tell you, confidence without noise is dangerous. It's magnetic. It draws people in because they can feel something they can't quite define. That's the kind of energy that changes rooms without saying a word. I remember talking to a woman once who said, Steve, I keep telling him I'm not like other women. I keep telling him I'm loyal, I'm patient, I'm the one who's got his back. I looked at her and said, baby, stop telling him. Start showing him. You don't announce loyalty. You live it. You don't describe your value. You demonstrate it. And if he can't see it after that, he don't deserve it. See, when you argue your worth, you give someone else the power to decide it. You put your value in their hands. But when you demonstrate your worth, you keep that power where it belongs, with you. That's why I always tell people, let your silence, your actions, and your standards speak louder than your explanations. Because what's real don't need to be defended. Truth stands by itself. Let me give you an example. Think about a luxury car, a Rolls Royce. You ain't never seen a commercial for a Rolls Royce, have you? They don't have to advertise. You know why? Because their value is understood. They don't compete with Hondas for attention. They don't try to convince people they're special. They move in a lane where people already know the price tag. That's how you need to carry yourself. You are the Rolls Royce of your own life. Stop standing in the dealership arguing with folks who can't afford to ride with you. Now, this doesn't mean arrogance. This ain't about walking around like you're better than somebody. It's about knowing your worth so deep that you don't beg people to recognize it. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is quiet. Arrogance is loud. Confidence says, I know what I bring. Arrogance says, you owe me. But demonstrating your worth, that's humble confidence. It's showing up every day, doing your thing, staying kind, staying grounded, and letting time reveal what talk never could. People forget this part. Arguing your worth drains you. It makes you smaller. You start bending over backward to prove something to people who will never clap for you. You start over explaining yourself in conversations that go nowhere. You start chasing approval from people who ain't even qualified to judge your value. And after all that, you end up frustrated, wondering why they still don't get it. But you see, they do get it. They just act like they don't. Because the moment you start fighting to prove your worth, you hand them control. Let's talk real. When somebody truly values you, you don't have to keep reminding them. You won't have to keep telling a real man how to treat you, because he'll already be doing it. You won't have to convince a real friend that you're loyal, because they're not yet met. And you won't have to explain your worth to the right people, because the right people recognize energy, not arguments. They feel who you are, and this goes both ways, men and women. Fellas, you too. Stop arguing your worth to people who keep overlooking your effort. If you're showing up, working hard, being real, and they still act like you ain't doing enough, that's your sign. You don't have to fight to be seen by someone who's already made up their mind not to see you. Just step back and let absence teach what presence could not. Let's talk about standards. When you live by standards, you don't need to argue them. Standards are not things you explain, they're things you enforce. If someone keeps crossing your boundaries, stop warning them. Start removing them. Because when you truly know your worth, you stop negotiating with people who act like they're doing you a favor by staying. You understand that respect is not earned by shouting. It's earned by walking away from what doesn't align with who you are. Now, the beauty of demonstrating your worth is that it's undeniable. Even people who pretend not to see it. They feel it. They may not admit it, but they sense it. That quiet confidence, that calm strength, that peace in your walk. It unsettles people who thrive on chaos because they realize they can't manipulate you anymore. They can't get a reaction. They can't make you explain yourself. And that's when they know they've lost their power. The people who truly value you will never make you argue your worth. They'll see it. They'll appreciate it. They'll match it. You won't have to convince them because they'll recognize the effort, the kindness, the loyalty, all the things that can't be faked. But you got to set the tone by showing them how it's done. When you demonstrate consistency, when you live your truth, when you stop settling for less than you deserve, the world adjusts. Let me tell you something from my own experience. Early in my career, I used to try to convince people to believe in me. I'd talk about my dreams, my goals, my vision. And most folks would just nod and smile like they didn't hear a word I said. But when I stopped talking and started working, when I got up early, kept the stage, stayed focused, kept my faith, suddenly people started calling. The same ones who didn't believe started saying, "Man, I knew you had it." No, they didn't. They just finally saw what I'd been saying. That's the difference between arguing and demonstrating. You got to understand, energy don't lie. You can't fake self-worth. You can say all the right words, post all the right quotes, but if your actions don't match, people sense that. But when your energy is right, when you walk with purpose, when you know what you stand for, when you stop settling, everything around you starts shifting. Opportunities come. Respect follows. Love gets deeper. Because the universe responds to demonstration, not debate. Every time you argue your worth, you're subconsciously telling yourself, you're not sure about it. But every time you demonstrate it, you're reinforcing it. You're saying, I don't need approval. I don't need applause. I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm here to live my truth. And that energy, that's unstoppable. That's how you attract the right people or repel the wrong ones without even trying. See, you can't convince someone to value something they've never had to earn. That's why you demonstrate, not to impress them, but to express you. To live out your standards so clearly that anyone who doesn't align naturally fades away. And that's not loss. That's alignment. When you demonstrate your worth, you don't lose people. You lose confusion. You lose stress. You lose the need for validation. Let me tell you something powerful. When you stop arguing your worth, silence becomes your strength, and consistency becomes your weapon. Every time you show up for yourself, every time you hold your head high and choose peace over drama, you prove your worth without saying a word. That's what makes people addicted to your presence. Not your voice, not your attention, but your energy. Ladies and gentlemen, stop telling people who you are. Show them. Stop trying to convince people to love you right. Love yourself right, and they'll learn from your example. Stop fighting to be understood. Start walking in your truth. Because when you stop arguing your worth and start demonstrating it, you don't just earn respect, you become it. Let me tell you something that too many people overlook in this loud, oversharing, attention, hungry world we're living in right now. Mystery, real, classy, confident mystery, is one of the most powerful forms of attraction you will ever have. The problem is, we live in a time where everybody's trying to explain themselves, post everything, prove everything, show every move they make. But what they don't realize is this: when you give away all your mystery, you give away your magnetism. Because mystery is what keeps people curious. It keeps them guessing. It keeps them drawn in, wondering what you're about to do next. See, when you leave a little to the imagination, when you don't let people read you completely, that's when you become unforgettable. Because mystery is not about playing games. It's about protecting your peace, your privacy, your presence. It's about letting people earn access instead of giving it away for free. When you're mysterious, you create space for desire to grow. You create curiosity. And let me tell you, curiosity is the seed of attraction. We've all heard that saying, familiarity breeds contempt. And that's true. When people think they figured you out, they stop appreciating you. They stop paying attention. But when you hold something back, when you let them see just enough to be intrigued, but not enough to be certain, you stay in their mind. You become the one they can't quite define, the one they keep thinking about, wondering. What's she about? What's going on in her head? That's how you stay magnetic. Now, let me make something clear. Mystery doesn't mean you're cold. Doesn't mean you're distant or fake. It means you understand that your life is not a public show, it's a privilege. And not everybody deserves front row seats. It means you know how to talk less and mean more. You smile, you move with grace, you keep some things private, and people start craving your attention because it's rare. We value what's rare. That's human nature. You want to know why people fall for mystery? Because mystery makes them work. When something or someone is mysterious, it activates pursuit. It lights up that instinct to figure things out, to get closer, to understand. And let's be real, people appreciate more what they have to work for. When you're too available, too predictable, too open too soon, people start taking you for granted. But when you move in silence, when you keep some things to yourself, you keep the spark alive. See, we've been taught wrong about relationships. We think attraction is all about looks or money or chemistry. But real attraction, lasting attraction, is about wonder. It's about what can't be easily explained. That's what makes a person linger in your mind. You ever meet somebody and you can't even describe why they got your attention? It's not their clothes, not their words. It's their presence. It's that quiet confidence, that subtle mystery, that something about them that pulls you in without them even trying. That's what I'm talking about. I'll tell you a story.